Welcome back to the Hero Roundtable YouTube show. We're back on the road, back on the horse, on the road with some interviews. When it rains, it pours, of course. And with the Hero Roundtable Michigan coming up in just over 2 months, I thought it'd be a good time to bring on some of the speakers that are coming to that event so you can get a little sneak into what they're about, who they are. The first one is Nicolas Domingo, and Nicolas is started Call to Inspire, which is an organization that does a lot of work with schools. He spends, well, I'm going to leave that to the show, I think, on what he actually does with that. But a really energetic, enthusiastic guy, and I think you'll enjoy the interview. Tickets are on sale for Hero Roundtable Michigan at heroroundtable.com/Michigan. As we confirm, well, not as we confirm speakers, but as we announce speakers, they'll be going up there as well. There's already 7 or 8 up there, including some returners, which of those including returners includes Joe Gatto for his 3rd Hero Roundtable in a row. On one note, a different kind of note, I'm planning to launch a version 2 of the collectible, well, maybe not collectible, the card game, the Hero deck that I did a Kickstarter with and produced some 2,000 decks of in, I don't know, 10 years ago now, maybe not that many. And I'm looking for an artist or a group of artists, possibly, probably prefer one artist, but someone who can produce about 50 portraits of real-life heroes. So if you're that person or you know someone who might be interested in doing that, let me know. You can get me on social media at Hero Roundtable, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or you can email me, matt@heroroundtable.com. Really looking forward to getting that going. Got a cool game mechanic that we're going to bring into that and make it a collaborative card game. Been playing a lot of board games lately that are collaborative and really starting to get into that. I like the idea of this game having kids collaborate with their own sort of set of heroes to solve various problems. So let me know. And without further ado, which is the most common phrase I hear on podcasts these days, and I really wish I hadn't just said that, here is Nicolas Domingo. Okay, so welcome to the show, Nicolas Domingo.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm really excited to talk to you today, and have excited to have already talked to you. But can we start with so what your job is right now?
What my job is I'm a captain. So I am the co-executive director of the organization Call to Inspire, pretty formally known as Captain Encouragement. That's how everyone kind of knows the program. Superhero teaching, compassion, kindness, emotional literacy, coping skills as superpowers. And we do that through a lot of different forms, whether it's we do school assemblies, we have a comic book series, we've done musicals in the past, and then we have our Getting Active events that we do at fairs and in collaboration with a lot of other performers. And then now this fall, late fall, we're looking to start actually filming the Captain Encouragement movie, because a lot of our purpose is to shift culture for how kids are being taught and how humans in general are interacting with one another.
That's an incredible job description.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, and you started quite formally, and then you got into the nitty gritty of it. I think that's the cool, exciting part. When you said that you're working with other performers, what does that look like?
So we've worked with musicians. One of the people we work with, his name's David Keller. He's one of my mentor's dear friend. We're actually seeing him this Sunday. We're going do a fun family thing together. But he is just this incredible guy, and he does exercise therapy, basically stretching. And he was the exercise therapist for every president from Ronald Reagan to President Obama. And he's just this like humble, amazing guy. And then we'll also work with a lady by the name of Zafira. She's a belly dancer, and she'll teach all these other things like cultural differences, belly dancing, Bollywood dancing. We've worked with like Leilani from Leilani and the Distractions, and she'll do some fun, active stuff. And so, based on who we kind of work with and contract with, we're able to then just change and add different flares to all of our events. So no single event is ever the same. And we'll work with right now we're working with Sound Extreme, and I'm really looking forward to building with them throughout the future. They are a lighting, special effects, as far as like lighting effects and music, and they do a lot of like really big shows.
So the performances that you're doing are
Mm-hmm.
mostly at schools, or are you doing stuff in sort of third party spaces and inviting schools in as well?
So we do events at schools. Now we're starting to do events at larger venues so that we can fit various schools in one venue. Um, and we do our Getting Active events. We're like contracted by fairs, festivals, things like that, and they'll bring us out to come put on these. You know, my goal is to be like a rock show for kids while teaching a message, and so that kids walk away just like kindness, yeah. They're like super on the level of wanting to be kind leaders in the world, and that's kind of like our message.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I can see how easy it would be to have sort of no ceiling on that. You can just keep amping up these performances, right?
Yeah, and that's that's what we've been doing. So like now we're talking with Sound Extreme, the company, and they're like, this next event we'll do two 12-foot screens, a big stage, trusses, 8 moving lights, and I'm like, we'll make it. Let's do it. Like I'm on the level. Let's do it. Yeah.
That's great. So, what's your background how did you get to be doing this? Because you started this organization, so that's partly why you're the executive director, but where did it come from?
It's a great question. Where did it start? I guess there's like a lot of different things, kind of like with what you're doing now. A lot of different things kind of mold you and shift your perspective and give you these strange abilities in different arenas, and eventually put it together and you're like, oh, okay. And so I kind of saw that as an opportunity to create something. And I looked at, and not to, society as a whole, I looked at it as a whole, and I saw a lot of flaws. I saw a lot of holes and opportunities. I saw it as opportunities, not just necessarily flaws. I was like, okay, this is a way to create a positive change, things like that. And so, I thought I've been lucky to have stepped into acting for a little bit. I did some superhero shows, and then they put me in a costume, and that kind of gave me context for heroes, and people had said, "Be like, you look like a superhero." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." But then I was like, "Oh, superheroes!" I was like, "Wow, that's such a positive vehicle to teach and deliver a message, especially to little kids." And so,
so that's definitely that's a component, right? That performative part. You're obviously comfortable performing. What shows were you on?
That was an interesting space. I just felt comfortable, and I think it's because with everything, like I put the why first. The how shows up with everything. So just lead with why, how shows up, and that's what I did. I reached this point in my life, my early 20s. I think it was my 22 to 24, that age range. And we get to this place of kind of like the wall. What am I here for? You hit that wall. You're like, what am I doing? What's life about? That whole conversation whenever a lot of things that you stepped and tried to go after failed. And I failed kind of pretty epically. And and it was like at the very bottom where I was like, well, who am I? Like, what am I chasing? Why did I get to this level and still wasn't happy? What's going on? And that's where I felt kind of broken, as a lot of people I feel do. But I think that's like the next phase in the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey was the call to adventure, actually taking the call, not like, oh, I'm gonna just press like I'll put you on hold or something. You got to actually take the hero's journey. And I stepped into it, and I was to that low point where it was. I remember just feeling in my heart saying, like, I remember I thought of the idea, and I felt in my heart everything in my entire existence lined up in one direction. And it was like, you're going to do this or you're going to die. I was like, okay, well, that's what we're doing, and that's what we're doing.
You're throwing out all these different things that I need to come back and follow up on. So Hero's Journey we'll come back to for sure.
Yeah.
But tell me more about the acting and getting superhero parts and being put into a costume. What was the story there?
So I randomly ended up in acting because I was living in like Orange County at the time. I was living in Dana Point, actually. And I took my mom and my brother to go see the live filming of Arsenio Hall. And we were going to see the episode, blah, blah. And then when we were in line, they're like, hey, would you like to have a push-up contest against Terry Crews? I was like, the Terry Crews? I was like, I'm a mega fan of Terry. He's just a kind guy. He speaks from his heart. He stands for so many positive, like, messages in the world. And he's my hero. It's like, yeah, absolutely. And and then they brought me on stage during the show. We had some push-up contest, and I just felt really comfortable. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I guess that's the thing. And then I went, I went up, and again, I've always been of just, when I'm going to do something, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go, 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 go. And I don't like taking no for an answer. So I was like, I'm acting now. And so I went in that direction, and started learning about acting, learning different things. And I got involved with background casting things. And I got onto the show, The Thundermans, and so that was one of the first superhero shows I was on, but I wasn't like a superhero, but I was around the superhero atmosphere. And then shortly after that, I got casted for background superhero on Mighty Mids for Disney, and they made me this character called the Chiller, and I had these like icicles on my arms, and I watched them make this costume. I was like, wow, that was really easy. And I didn't process it till later, like, oh, man. But I remember watching, because they brought me into the sizing room. After craft services, that was my favorite part of it. Everything dealing with film was craft services. Like, I hope the films were great, but the craft services, just such good. So they brought me back there, and they're doing all the sizing and everything, and I'm watching them cut out this cool suit, and it's like this. Not replica, but like the manta ray. It was like a replica manta ray skin. It wasn't actually massacre some manta rays for that. I'm very happy about that. But they used some replica thing, and they created this cool looking costume. And I was like, yeah. And I was on for like three episodes, and that was a lot of fun. That was cool. But then things kind of transitioned, and I kind of started to learn about the industry a little bit. I mean, some of it's really great, but some of it's really dark. And some people just want to claw over each other to get places. And I didn't feel my heart was there. I felt I was chasing the idea. Kind of people paint this idea of like actors, models, and people paint this picture. So I was chasing the picture. And once I started to even get closer, I was like, I don't know if I like this. And that was kind of a turn off, because I had started putting all this energy into it, but I didn't feel my heart was there. So I was like, okay, I'm done. And then I just kind of shifted in another direction. And yeah.
Okay. So the Terry Crews connection's interesting too, because we invited him to speak at the last Michigan Hero Roundtable, and then doing it again this year. But he was a high school friend with a good friend of mine in Flint.
Nice.
So
let's get a rematch.
Yeah. I'll challenge him.
No, he's amazing.
Yeah, he's got a lot of good to share around this topic, obviously, as well. So we're just crossing our fingers for scheduling possibilities. But yeah, so I want to hone in on that, putting the superhero costume on, because a couple of years, and I don't think you were completely clear that that's what you do at the start when you were describing, but you've got a costume and a character that you play. So a couple of years ago, we had a medieval sword fighter speaking at Hero Roundtable, and one of the things that I heard from her early on was that almost magical feeling that someone gets when they pick up a real medieval sword. And that sort of everything that does to the person's body, they feel that sort of rush of strength and possibility, I suppose, as well. When you're putting on these professionally made costumes, were you feeling that, or were you too hyped up about what was for lunch? Or
oh, you mean on the show, or what I wear now?
Oh well, on the show initially, if there was any spark there, but certainly now I imagine there's some real.
The show, when I did the show, it was kind of like it kept you, chest up, and the way it was really tight, and so you were in the hero mode. But whenever I had the first costume made for Captain, I remember I was so much, and I still am, but it was just, I remember at that point, it didn't matter at all. I was like, this is it, and it still is that way. But at that point, it was kind of like, it wasn't a high-grade costume, but it was an amazing individual, took the time out of her day and days to build this costume from scratch. And a good friend of mine, Helen, and she made a phenomenal costume. And because the way it started was I found these old ski goggles or something, I don't know, like racquetball goggles, because it was a hero goggle looking thing, except they were rounded, so it was like a happy face, it was like a happy eyes. And I was like, yeah, okay. And so I remember I want to share a story at the presentation, but my mentor threw me to the fire basically with my costume. I think I told you about that story over the phone. And so when I put those goggles on, it was I always wait till the end to put the goggles on, because then I take a back seat and Captain Encouragement shows up and he just does whatever, and then he gives me my tired body back at the end of all these long events. Like, I feel like it's like, all right, well, like the mask, Jim Carrey's The Mask. Once they're on, it's just like he shows up, and I'm riding back seat, and people are asking these questions, and super snappy responses. Working with kids for so long, you get really quick, like super quick, because kids will ask the most off-the-wall questions, and you have to be prepared with an answer, because your hero, your character, has a backstory, and these kids are asking some deep, random questions about the universe of Captain. And so I have to be able to respond accordingly. It was like, oh yeah, that was a villain's brother's best friend that I had to take on, and what happened there was, because they'll ask some strange questions. But yeah, I take a back seat and allow him to do it, and then at the end of it, I just, like a piece of Jello, and I take it off, and my body kind of collapses. My wife now, my wife calls it the cap zap, and so it's like after these events, I get something called the cap zap, and she's like taking me out of this costume. It was like, because I'm giving my everything to the kids I'm working with. I'm giving my everything to the audience, and I'm just like, la, 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 like 150% from start to finish. And then I just, afterwards, it's always like a cap zap comes.
It sounds like you need a cap nap after that as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's not surprising to me, but also fascinating. And you're out of costume, quite positive and energetic, and I haven't met you yet, but I think you're going to be one of my favorite people.
Oh, well, thank you.
You've got all of that, and there was a guy I worked with at camp who just had that energy all the time and was consistently positive. But it sounds like you're able to concentrate all of that into Cap. And just remove any anxieties or worries from life for those moments. And what a really interesting experiment for other people, I suppose, too, to in their everyday, what can they do to use that?
Yeah, and that's kind of almost some of the topics I'm going to cover in the speech. But one of the things I'm not going to bring it up in the speech so we can talk about it. But I used to I used to be really nervous about speaking, and I remember I was like, I'm going to have to be able to speak really effectively to be able to share this message with people. So I scheduled a month of speaking engagements, and I was like, this is going to be great, or this is going to suck. And so I went, and before all my events, I will. I think my best friend Jacob passed away when I was 19, and I got that call, and he's gone, and it was world shattering for me. But I'll think about that, and not to bring me down, but for context of the experience, so that people will be like, oh no, what about this? I'm gonna be speaking in front of people. And I'll think I'll remember that day of losing my best friend Jacob, and I'll think, how does this compare to that? And I'll be like, this is nothing. This is fun. This is the good stuff. And there is no worse that's gonna happen that will be comparative. So then I'm like, okay, and I go on, and then just go whatever it is, no matter how big crowd, no nothing. It's just okay, it's a thing, and that kind of is that fearless comparison for me, because everyone's gone through horrible things in life to some degree or another. Everyone has their hell, and that for me is that fear removing piece is what is this compared to that?
Yeah, that's fantastic to be able to do that. What else? So you're working with kids, and it sounds like that's you're thinking the right things and saying the right things. As someone who used to hire people to work with kids, and who worked with kids, did you have that background beforehand, or is that something that you're working through now?
That wasn't. I didn't have a background. I mean, I grew up with a lot of brothers and a sister, and so I grew up in a very, very quickly changing area. And I'd lived in a lot of different places in my life, so I got to meet people from all walks of life, and I think that kind of gave me contextualized for just all the differences and just accepting people as a whole. And it's just been I never really can say I didn't do anything that involved a ton of kids, but I looked at society and I said, if you're going to create the change, do it when kids are in that early developmental stage. It just kind of made sense. You have to. There's not a maybe we should. There's you have to. And that's when people are adapting their traits, absorbing who they are, that early intervention, and that's kind of what I was we kind of have to. And then I was very fortunate to meet a lot of mentors along the road that had data and had information and resources in that space that were you're on the right track, but change this, alter this, because when everyone wants to change the world to some degree, for the most part, but then they'll have this big abstract, the world, and it's okay, how? And it's I'll make them happy. It's okay, come on, let's abstract. You start to dig into the mission. You start to get closer to that epicenter of okay, there's this variable, this thing needs to get done, and then I'm okay, now we're gonna do it based on this, and then there's this. You have to kind of get closer. The closer you get, the bigger and the more of the field you see, and that was I loved your speech that you did, the TED Talk that you did about the anti-bullying and then the concept around bullying, because I came into bullying 100% was we're gonna stop bullying, and so I had that pretty early on, was just this concept, this abstract view of the word anti-bullying. It's we're just gonna stop it. It's that's saying we're stopping homelessness now. It's okay, dissect it. What are the pieces? What are the moving parts in this whole mechanism? And that's kind of what over years I've learned about the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, and how coping mechanisms and the cultural the cultural norms and all these other things that kind of play into people, there's just so many different factors that kind of play into it, and that's what I love your speech. I loved it. Amazing.
Thanks. I've had that experience with that bullying stuff as well. Is once you drill down and start looking for the causes, rather than stopping the outcomes, there are all kinds of opportunities to interfere with that creation of the bullying. I enjoy that talk too. I enjoy giving that talk to schools and teachers, because it's hard. It's hard being a teacher to teach what you're teaching, and you've also got to do this and this and this and
like emotional literacy and teach coping skills, understand the home life of 30 plus kids and break down all these pieces
So what have the reactions been from schools? Obviously it's positive because you keep going into schools. What are some of the things, because I'm asking this because for whatever reason, when I saw what you were doing, it seemed very genuine. And looking at your Instagram feed, and it's very easy to be cheesy when you're wearing a superhero costume. And I didn't get any taste of cheese from you at all.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
And that's why we're having this conversation, because I've seen that before. I've seen people dressing up and it's cheesy, but you've got real intent and real background and reasons for using this. And you seem to be genuine, and I imagine kids are responding to that, but I'm answering the question that I asked you. So what are you hearing from schools about what you're doing?
We've heard some really amazing, like testimonials. A lot of our stuff is testimonial driven. I think the longer that whenever you spend, like we talked about, the closer you get to the epicenter of the problem, like the more I'm obsessed with, solving it, for lack of a better word, because, there's not necessarily a full solution for the human experience and making everything perfect. And maybe that doesn't exist, but the closer we've gotten, it's like we have to keep upping the ante. We are competing with all these different things. And I've been obsessed with, if we're going to compete with the issues that exist in this world and all the things these kids interact with, all the problems that they're going to face, you have to bring A game, or you're not competing. You're not on the same plateau, so it's pointless. And so I just thought, if we are really going to come in at that level, like we have to. And the next year even better. And the next year we'll cut down what didn't work. We'll, just the obsession with the perfecting and trying to reach more kids has been that's what allowed it to stay genuine and have a lot of amazing people involved who care about the similar mission, all different walks of life, but everyone's like, everyone talks about a better world for our kids, but no one is taking it on. It's like, we really need a better world. It's like, okay. That'd be like me sitting there, not feeling like I'm in the best shape, like, I really should be in shape. It's like, well, you have to, there's exercise, there's regiments, there's pieces, there's things. And then, with this, we've gone to so many, like a lot of different schools, in the early days, it wasn't that effective. It inspired a lot of kids, but it wasn't where it needed to be. So we kept refining. And a lot of schools who went to just responded really well. And we hear stories of kids being like, no, I'm like Captain Encouragement. I don't need to use these words. Like, I don't like these words. I know who to ask for help. I'll ask a safe adult, or I'll help, this lady with her groceries. We got like a video of this mom sent us of this little kid going and helping an older lady put the groceries, because he's like a mega fan of Captain. And he's helping put these groceries in the cart, and like the old lady in the video is like looking at the boy and looks at the mom. She's like, like gives a good thumbs up, and just like built like that kind of like feeds it. It's like, yes, it's working. Like it's great to see these micro points of effectiveness, and hearing these different kids talk about different things that worked out, hearing stories from teachers of kids who typically would respond with violence, choosing to just ask a teacher for help and stop the situation. Because in the real world, when you respond with violence in non-violent necessary situation, you end up in jail. That's where you go. If it's like, like pride to pride, you can meet that all day. But whenever you respond with violence, you're going to end up in jail for real. Maybe not in the school world, but bullying does translate to a lot of negative things once you become an adult. So we're not teaching them correctly. Anyway, I don't want to go down that long road. So with all the different schools we've gone to, we just hear these stories of groups of kids doing these things differently, using the same verbiage of being resilient. Like we've gone back to schools and the kindergartner kids, they'll be like, because we do revisits on a regular basis. And some of the kindergartners are like, yeah, I remember my superpower being resilient. And my wife is always with me when we do these because she's Candace encouragement. I'm Captain encouragement. Because he has a family. And so we'll look at each other like wide-eyed, it's working, and the more that we find what works, we tune it and we make it better. You see what does, what doesn't. And there's so many, every kid is their own kind of combination lock. Every kid's going to require a different combination to really get to them and reach them with the message. And the plan and the point is to develop leaders, to develop critical thinking, positive, non-violent leaders, and just develop a large culture. There's a lot of schools that we've gone to, like, yeah, we loved the program. We would love for you to come back. Yes, absolutely, yes. And a lot of places we've gone, we'll hear these every time we've done something, we will always hear stories. There's always stories of a parent, of a kid, from an administrator, from a principal, of like one of the principals said they overheard these conversations of these kids being mean, but then they decided, the other kid came up and used some of like the captain verbiage, and we're just like, whoa, like that is that catalyst. I love the word catalyst because it's that intro, that spark that creates a different outcome in the end of it.
Yeah, that's and so how is this funded? Are the schools paying for this in total? Are you getting because you're a non-profit? Are you getting grants to be able to go into the schools for free or for reduced fee, or how does that work if you're a school watching this?
So schools, we try to reach out and see, the need in the community first, to find out what the need is, find out, a group that would like the help, would like the program to come to their school, and then we will go and reach out to local businesses to microfund it, because our point and our plan is to not charge schools at all. For some schools can afford it, that's great, but we try to absorb the cost for the school, like from the businesses, to offset the costs so that it can be put on. The businesses can help sponsor it. Kids get an amazing performance, and it continues to reach more people. And we always try to get it in that format, but we need the funding first before we can do it, because we'd love to go to every school on the planet. But we know the cost, we know what budgets a lot of the schools have, and it's minuscule. They don't have massive budgets all the time. So we try to work with every school, and if they have a budget, it's amazing. It allows for us to do certain things, but we'll always try to bring as much as we can, and we try to do it. The new format is multiple schools in one setting, so that show is a rock show.
Yep.
That show is over the top, and the kids are going to walk away just, whoa, I'm a hero, let's be kind.
And it's great that you've got that supplemental stuff too. You said you've got the comics and you've got a movie that'll be coming. That's a big project. Yeah, and the story piece there is such an important component, and that being able to, like you said you've got some fans, so having those fans being able to consume and keep being reminded after that is a great piece.
The tangible medium is really important. The comic book, that's kind of been such an important part for some of the schools we've gone to, where we could get the additional funding. Like our sponsors for the comic book itself, because we sell sponsorships in the comic book, we sell sponsorships in the movie, as well as for the program as a whole. And we had Sonora Area Foundation and Auto Tech and Tires were these two amazing organizations that came in and basically helped fund so much of our comic book series to get it off the ground more effectively. And for the most recent event we did, it was Friends of the Library of Valley Springs, California. And they covered a comic book for each student, and we were just like, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" And then we were able to do it even at some of the areas in Amador County. That we had a lot of support from the local Rotary clubs and some of the local officials and some families that really believed in the message. And sending the kids home with the comic book was monumental, because one of the schools we visited, I think almost a year later, we revisited, and they pulled these worn comic books out of their desk and were like quoting it, and we're like, "Whoa, that's interesting." And they did the same thing because it's their thing, their comic book, they own it, and they the message resonated. So, like, yes, absolutely.
So the idea of using the comic, of using a superhero, did you at any point flirt with the idea of using an established superhero, ignoring the fact that copyrights and trademarks probably would have been a huge burden? But I know that you have feelings around the existing superheroes and how they don't support your work in the way that you like them to. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of a lot of heroes, a lot of the more modern ones, there's a lot of vulgarity used. There's a lot of undertones that are thrown in the movies, so it's entertaining to older individuals, and that kind of was like, I don't want to get behind that because whatever message you stand for, you're getting behind that entire message of what's already out there in the public's eye. And so that was important for me to just be like, yeah, we can't do that, and we have to create a new, universe for a character, and it can't be that. And because all these, there are some good superheroes that teach great messages, deliver a great message, but at the same time there's undertones of what they're teaching, what they're saying, using curse words, using violence, and I know there's like the justification of, well, it's against a bad guy. It's like, well, for certain superheroes and certain supervillains, they already have a universe they exist in. They already have the, like, what they do, and then they'll use these different words, and then kids want to emulate what you kind of put in front of them. So if they're wanting to emulate, one example, I'm not a fan of Deadpool at all, and that teaches just some genuine vulgarity. That teaches genuine, like, the humor of killing, and it was just, I can't even. And it was, a lot of these universes already exist, so I was like, we have to create something and someone new, and create the universe from the ground up, create the backstories from the ground up, and we've been able to work with a lot of amazing writers that help bring that to fruition.
Yeah, it's really insightful. I think I'd love and probably should at some point write a set of stories in a using all of the stuff that I want to teach, or using the stuff that I've learned and want to teach. Because as you say, especially with those shared universes and even decades of writing around the same characters, you can have an incredibly wholesome, useful Spider-Man story. But then you that Spider-Man exists in the same world that another less appropriate Spider-Man story lives.
So we had to build from the ground up, because you look at all of them, and there is, like, to one degree or another, and then it's always based on that person's interpretation of that hero or perspective of that hero. So we had a lot of groundwork to lay.
So how do you how's the creation of the comic happen? Have you got a separate team working on that under your directions, or are they going out to contractors, or how do you get the creators of the comic on the mission, really owning the mission?
We'll have, like, writer sessions, and we're always trying to bring in new writers and new like, fresh ideas, but it'll usually be my wife, myself, and a few other people, and we'll kind of just, like, what's the premise of this comic book? Like a writer's room, basically. And we worked with a lot of amazing writers over the years, and they'll kind of like, oh, here's this, and we're like, oh, no, I don't like that, like, and sometimes I feel like the Michael Bay in it, where I'm just like, explosion, because I'm a kid and I want to see the big explosion. But like, good guy comes to rescue, blah blah blah, and I'll see it in little pieces, and they'll see some pieces, and we'll put together a concept of, like, what's the overall message of this comic? What's the purpose? Oh, okay, here's the comic. Okay, so how can we tell that through a story? And we'll tell it through a story, and then it's like, okay, what would the blocking look like? Because with comic books, it's all pictures, so this frame, this frame, this frame, a few little frames here, and then we'll be like, no, yes, no, yes. And then I outsource the various freelancers to do the penciling, the inking, the coloring, and then once we go through coloring, then there's like a few phases of typesetting and graphic design and formatting, and then we go through our local Staples here in Jackson, and we get a lot of our stuff printed in bulk, the saddle stitch because it's a comic book, like ding ding ding, and that's typically it's kind of like a quick overview, but there's a lot more involved. We do work with another an editing team that does all the spell checking, and they're based in Boston. And that's, because we're working with young kids, I don't want to teach them improper grammar or spelling or anything like that. And then
so you're very hands-on is the secret. It's making sure that it lines up.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of oversight and back and forth and kind of just making sure start to finish, just overseeing the whole process, but, allowing people to be creative in their own ways. And like that's like when we work with the coloring or the inking, I'll be like, he'll be like, what do you see in this? I was like, what do you see in this? It's like, well, I see this happening. I'm like, let's see it, let's do it. And that's Hugo. Hugo's our rad guy, but he gets it done. And we'll do that whole process, and we'll reach out to sponsors to cover the cost, because there's a lot of costs associated with that process, start to finish, which is the sponsorship for the comic book and do all the logo placement, inside cover, etc. But and we don't do the accepting of alcohol, gambling, gun, like the things that we obviously will never want to teach kids. So
yeah. So you mentioned earlier that the hero's journey, and you were able to use that in your life and see those stages in your life. When did you encounter that? Was that part of this journey? Was it, or did you hear it earlier?
Did I hear about the hero's journey?
Yeah.
So I heard about the hero's journey a couple of years ago, but then I kind of like. You ever have like a life experience where it shifts your perspective, and you have to then relive all your perspectives through that new perspective, and you like when humility shows up, or it doesn't show up like kindly. It's not like, oh, I'm now humble. You're like, you have to relive the painful moments. But that's like with this was I learned the hero's journey, and then it becomes applicable to the various areas of my life. Because there wasn't a single journey. There was anytime there was a call to adventure. Sometimes it was the wrong call to adventure, but I mean, in the end, I guess technically it was the right one, because all of them led to this. It's all like one larger hero's journey. But I just there's a lot of hero's journeys. But I found out about Alan Watts, and I became a very big student of Alan Watts and his work. And then a friend of mine, Ginger, said, have you ever heard of Joseph Campbell? I was like, who's Joseph Campbell? And this is when I first, like around the time I started Captain Encouragement. And she's like, check his work out. I was like, all right. And so then I found Joseph Campbell, this brilliant mind, hero of 1,000 faces, and all this incredible work that he's done, and how he's just the forefront of so many different things, and taking all these different human experiences portrayed through different cultures throughout all time, just kind of broken down into these stories. Like, yes, like good job, like that's. And I just became a mega fan. Instantly, I was on that.
Great. What does the future look like for you? What are you aiming for? It sounds like you're constantly building on what you've got. So is there a target you're building towards, or are you just, as you said before, you're improving all the time? Every time it's like, make that better next time, make that better next time. But is there a place you're going?
Yeah, there's a few different directions that we're wanting to go. We're wanting to grow our organization, bring on a lot more team members. I mean, I foresee a captain in just about every country on the planet, and that is for the purpose of this hero doesn't just exist in one area. He doesn't look like one specific race or role, because it's going to be hard for someone from another ethnic background to look at me and not feel like, oh, you're like a tall, privileged white male. Like, what? Like telling me to be happy, and I'm dealing with these issues. This is my cultural background. So the hope and the plan Not a big fan of the word hope. I apologize for using it. I plan on being able to develop into the various countries and develop a movie that makes to shift culture around our program. And I mean, I want to serve the world in a lot of different ways and not just through Captain. And so, stepping into different arenas of how to look at problems, work with other great minds to solve them. And for Captain, over the next decade, our plan is just continue to be on the exponential curve of growth and continue to create change. And then over the next 20 years, my plan is to reach half the human population of 4.5 billion people. Because in the next 20 years, the human population reaches 9 billion, or is expected to reach 9 billion by 2040 or 2035. I think, yeah. And so our plan is 4.5 billion. And so to stay on the exponential curve, I think next year we have to reach 1 million people to continue on that route. And that's what the movie's for. So, yeah.
So in expanding to those different countries, are you intending to have a new character in those countries that becomes part of the universe?
It's like a Green Lantern universe, except Captain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so the same hero, but a different alter ego.
Different story. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I think I should hook you up with my brother, who's written some young adult fiction. He's a teacher, huge comic consumer, loves superhero fiction, and recognizes and talks about the importance of diversity in those stories and being able to see yourself in the comic. It'd be you guys have some stuff to talk about.
My way. Yes, my information. Yes, please.
Yeah. So I want to be respectful of your time here. So if we just have a few more minutes. How can people find you? How can they get the comic? How can they get you? How can they talk to you? What's the website? Social media? Which platforms are you on? How can they get you?
Yeah. So we're on the social medias. Yes, we do all of these social medias. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Kind of on Twitter. I wouldn't say we're really Twittering it up. Not a massive into that, but we have everything is at symbol call to inspire. So CALLTO inspire. Our website is getting an overhaul at the moment, so it's very outdated. It's from about 2 years ago. We've just been growing, and then we look at the website, we're like, yeah, we forgot to update all that, didn't we? So the best way of really getting a hold of us is our Facebook, basically, and that has a lot of our information. That's kind of all of our information is on the website, and it's all accurate information. But people who want to reach out, get involved, things of that nature, they can find us there.
And you do schools outside of California, right?
Yeah. We've been all over. We've been to Boston. We did an event in Kansas City. Have had some other events that kind of in the future that are going to be further out. So yeah, we go all over. It's depending on the funding. I would love to serve every school and reach every child. So it always depends on the funding, and if that's there, then we can serve.
Awesome.
And that's been a hard lesson.
I know that lesson.
The lesson of I want to serve, I want to help. Here's free services, and it's like, I would love to help everybody, but at the same time, I've learned about sustainability, and you want to help, but good deeds, it's hard to exchange them for rent or for car payments or anything like that. So
very much so.
Yeah.
And obviously people can come and see you at the Hero Roundtable October 28th and 29th. I think I'm looking forward to bringing you into the family, and I'm anticipating some of the regular goers really loving meeting you and getting involved. And there's one in California I think you'll probably become buddies with.
Nice.
But also the people that are in the audience, there's a great connection there. So really looking forward to having you there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to being a part of it. I was super excited when you reached out and we checked out what you're doing, and I was like, yes, this guy's awesome. I was super excited when I saw all the work you're doing and have been doing.
Well, thank you. And I forgot when you were telling people how to get you, how can they buy? Can people buy the comic individually, or is that handed out to schools?
So usually it is hand out to schools. We do have a link on our website. We're talking about kind of pulling it down just because of making it to where it's for the kids who are part of it, and maybe making it more of a direct exchange for the kids we're working with. But it is currently on the site. I don't know how long that's going to last because we really want to like because we tried a subscription model for a little bit and a few other things that we tried, and they weren't viable, and so we're talking about pulling that because it adds a lot to ship out every time someone wants a comic. But right now it is still available, but I don't know. That's while supplies last.
So get in early. All right. Well, Nicolas Domingo, thank you so much for your time. We're really looking forward to hearing your talk,
awesome.
which I know lots of time is going into. So, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, Anthony and Ruth at Heroic Voice Academy have been really, like, we're up to twice a week now that we have our sessions, and so I'm really, really grateful to be working with them. And so, yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, brother. I'll talk to you soon. And if you need anything else from me, just reach out.
Awesome.
All right.